everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk Physical Media. My name is John. Faith will be with me in a little while for the Q&A portion of this week's show, but we like to start this show off every single week with the news. And this week, we have a lot to catch up on. I filmed last week's show on a Wednesday, and a lot of stuff came out after that, including Arrow Video announcing their May 2024 releases, and there was actually 3 films in there that just stood out that I absolutely cannot wait for. The first one being Narc. Narc is a great film starring Jason Patric and Ray Liotta. It has one of the most incredible openings in film history, and I think the rest of the movie actually stands up very well. Also, I only saw this for the first time a few years ago because I was reading a list about the greatest film openings, and Narc popped up on that list, and I read the cast. I'm like, Jason Patric, Ray Liotta, love both of them, had to see the movie, absolutely enjoyed the hell out of it. It actually might be Ray Liotta's second best performance, only behind Goodfellas. Nothing will ever top Goodfellas. Ray Liotta was born to play Henry Hill.
I swear, Henry, they would have found it! Oh, no! Why did you do that? What?
But still, he is fantastic in Narc. And then another one that got announced was The Long Good Friday, which is really funny. I've never actually seen this movie before, and it's coming to 4K Blu-ray. It's not coming to 4K Blu-ray in the US. I think this is a UK only release, but because it's a 4K Blu-ray, it'll be region free. I'll probably grab it through either Diabolic DVD or the Atomic Movie Store. I'll have it sent here because I absolutely have to see this movie on 4K Blu-ray, even though I've never seen the film before. David, aka Shamrock Balls, him and I are actually going to be reviewing that film on our show in honor of Easter coming up at the very end of this month. And of course, the 4K Blu-ray is coming out in May, so I'm going to have to stream it first because I've never seen the movie before. And if I hate it, well, then I don't have to get the 4K Blu-ray, but still, I feel like this is the kind of movie I'm going to like based on the description. I don't know why, I've never seen it before. It seems like my type of film, but either way, really looking forward to reviewing that at the end of this month. And if I enjoy it, we'll get that 4K Blu-ray. And then the thing that really stood out to me is Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak coming to 4K Blu-ray. Crimson Peak is probably Guillermo del Toro's most underrated film. I remember when this movie came out, it stars Tom Hiddleston. People were really excited for this one. They really thought it was going to be a straightforward haunted house movie, when really, it's kind of a gothic horror romance film at its core. It has great effects. It looks absolutely stunning. It was just that people weren't expecting this type of movie. But once you get on board with what type of movie it is, you will absolutely love Crimson Peak. I think this really started the big run for Guillermo del Toro. We had this, then we had Shape of Water, then we had Nightmare Alley, then Pinocchio. I think Guillermo del Toro's big run, one of his best runs in his career, actually started with Crimson Peak, and hopefully this Arrow Video 4K Blu-ray actually brings in new fans, because I think Crimson Peak definitely deserves a second shot if you didn't enjoy it the first time. And if you skipped it because you heard it wasn't good, I can definitely recommend you give it a shot, because I think a lot of people just didn't realize what kind of movie they were getting at the time. I still think it's a great Guillermo del Toro film. And then the biggest news for me now, this doesn't have a confirmation of a release date or anything like that, but apparently Killer Klowns from Outer Space is going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray, courtesy of Scream Factory. I have Killer Klowns on Outer Space on Blu-ray. I actually just have a pretty cheap Blu-ray release, and that's because I've been waiting for a 4K Blu-ray release from Scream Factory for a long time. It feels like the perfect film to come to 4K Blu-ray. It's a very colorful film. Yeah, it's a cheap movie, but it's a really enjoyable 80s horror film. It's basically a B movie, but it's a great horror comedy, one that a lot of people enjoy. It's got a pretty big cult following, and I'm one of those people who absolutely love Killer Klowns from Outer Space, and I cannot wait to talk about this one on 4K Blu-ray. We don't have a confirmed date or anything for it yet, but I imagine sometime in either the summer or in the early fall, we'll be getting that one on 4K Blu-ray. So that was the biggest news, but we also got an announcement for John Waters' Crybaby, coming to us from Kino Lorber. This is a 1990 film that stars Johnny Depp. I've actually never seen Crybaby, but the cover looks interesting. I know a lot of people enjoy this film. Maybe I'll pick up this Kino Lorber 4K Blu-ray. I think it comes out on April 30th. Another thing that got announced while I was away, and I consider this to be one of the saddest movies that I have ever seen. This is a movie I didn't see for the first time until I watched with my wife, because she said that either this or Beaches was the saddest movie that she'd ever seen. And in honor of its 35th anniversary, we're going to be getting Steel Magnolias on 4K Blu-ray. And this might not be a movie for everybody. I know this might be seen by some people as a chick flick, but I absolutely love Steel Magnolias. You get Sally Field in this, you get Dolly Parton, and you get a really young Julia Roberts in this film, really before she took off. This might have came out around the same time as Mystic Pizza, but this is before Pretty Woman. This is before everything she did in the 1990s, and I cannot wait to get this one on 4K Blu-ray on April 23rd. April is just looking like a stacked month, and we got an announcement for a steelbook in June, and this is going to be Glory on 4K Blu-ray. This already has a 4K Blu-ray release, but they announced a brand new steelbook, and this steelbook is going to have Dolby Vision over it, so the previous release only had HDR10. That's because it was a pretty early 4K Blu-ray release, and this steelbook is absolutely gorgeous. So I'm probably actually going to grab this us, this one is coming out on June 4th. And for a lot of people, their favorite film of 2023 was Godzilla -1. We've actually had 2 releases here in the United States. We had the original release, and then we had the Godzilla -1 color release that came out, I believe, at the end of January. But a lot of people have been asking, when's the physical media release going to be coming out? We had a rumor of a steelbook that kind of came out, and I think at the end of December, but we haven't heard anything since. And it was reported this week that Toho is going to be working with Janus Films on the release of this for physical media in the United States. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, who will be the distributor, but at least we finally got some word on this eventually coming to physical media. So I guess it's going to be a little bit more time. I imagine this is something that will probably come out in July or August while they take their time. I actually guessed that this would actually come out around the new legendary Godzilla King Kong film that's coming out pretty soon, which I saw the trailer for while I was watching Dune 2, and that movie CGI and special effects just look absolutely awful. Now, I haven't been a fan of the United States Godzilla films other than 2014's Gareth Edwards film. I actually thought that one was very well done. Everything since just has not worked for me, but I'm also not the biggest summer blockbuster guy. Like, I love blockbusters, but they have to have a little bit more to them. They actually have to have a little bit of thought behind them. I don't like to just see big explosions on the big screen just for big explosion's sake. Now, I need to have a little bit more substance to them, so the Godzilla films here in the United States just haven't worked for me, and this one looks like another one that's not going to work for me as well. And it's funny because another trailer I actually saw was Furiosa, and I try and avoid trailers. That's why I don't do trailer reactions here on the channels, because I like to go in the films as blind as possible. When I go to the movies, though, I can't really avoid trailers, and I try and erase them from my mind, or, not look at the screen. But I saw Furiosa pop up, and I was one of like 3 people who didn't really enjoy Mad Max Fury Road. I will revisit it before Furiosa comes out, because I'm going to actually see that movie, and we'll probably talk about all the Mad Max physical media releases here before then. The Furiosa trailer, it just did not knock my socks off, and again, the CGI just looked awful. There's one shot in the trailer with Chris Hemsworth and a bunch of bullets, and they just look awful. I mean, again, it's not out yet, and the special effects still have some time to be worked on. This is just a trailer. It's just a rough cut. So, they still got some time to polish things up, but I really hope they do, because that trailer just did not impress me. And we'll have to wait and see, because one thing I could say about Mad Max Fury Road, even if I didn't love the film, it absolutely looked gorgeous. And speaking of Dune 2, I'm sure a lot of you guys are seeing that this week. Well, if you're a physical media collector, we actually got our first look at the Dune 2. We finally got our first look at the Dune 2 4K steelbooks that are going to be coming out, and they look absolutely gorgeous as well. I'm definitely very impressed with them, leaning into the orange as you would expect. Now, there were rumors that we might get Dune Part 1 on 4K again, because a lot of people weren't too impressed with the original one. I was actually talking to somebody that said that the HDR levels on the original one, that's why it had such a dimmer and darker look to it, and they're actually saying that we might get the IMAX enhanced scenes when we get Dune Part 2 on 4K Blu-ray, and bring back Dune Part 1 and, enhance it, bring back the enhanced IMAX scenes, turn up the brightness a little bit, and we'll have to wait and see if that's true. But right now, at least we know that Dune 2 is going to be coming to 4K Steelbook, and it just looks phenomenal. So that's probably the version that a lot of people are going to be getting, but we'll have to wait and see about Dune Part 1 on 4K Steelbook again. I imagine we might get a re-release of that. It feels like a missed opportunity to not have Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 together in some sort of premium packaging, and I imagine we'll get that. If we don't get that in its initial release, I imagine sometime down the line we'll get that. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for the news this week. Let's kick it over to me and Faith for this week's Q&A portion of the show. Alright guys, I got Faith here for the Q&A portion of this week's show, but before we get started with that, me and Faith just went on vacation. How was your trip?
I had such a good time. We did a few podcasts. We saw Soul Asylum. Mm-hmm. We sat through pretty much the whole show of that, which was fun.
Even though they're only really known for Runaway Train, we saw them all.
Yeah.
And Runaway Train's still their best song.
Never going back. Long way on a one-way track.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good time. Lots of drinks. John got especially drunk.
Oh, yes. Let me tell you this. So the last night of our trip, there was a 3 o'clock martini tasting. So we figured we'd go to that, then enjoy the last night. We get off the ship in the morning. So turns out martinis are very heavy on the alcohol. So I had about 8 martinis. Even tried James Bond.
They were the small ones. They were like tasters. But they were halfway. They were like a half martini.
And I also drank some of yours.
You drank one of mine. And then so you finish.
And we tried James Bond's martini, which is absolutely disgusting. Pure alcohol. Like, it tastes like rubbing alcohol with an olive in it. Yeah. It's just gross. So he is a man's man. He proved that to me with this drink, as if I didn't know before. James Bond, real manly guy. But yeah. Cosmos, man. I understand why the Sex and the City girls love Cosmos. Those are delicious.
We had chocolate martini, which was delicious.
Espresso martini.
The espresso martini. You ate a
espresso bean.
Espresso bean and got really sick off of that.
Yeah, that was a different day. But I threw up another day because of the espresso bean, because I did not expect it to taste that bitter and not be able to get it out of your mouth. But then when we had the martini tasting, after all those drinks, well, that was it for the day for me. I had to go back up to the room, and I spent that day operating between sleeping, throwing up, drinking water, watching a little bit of, because they had an everlasting loop of just the same 3 Kevin Smith movies: Clerks, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and Chasing Amy. So I would just wake up, stare at that for a little while, then repeat and do it all again until the next day when they kicked us off the cruise. So that was it for me.
Yeah. We got pictures with them, but that line was a disaster. That was the only thing I could say I didn't enjoy about it, was the line. I think that could have been done a little bit better, but overall, Six Man did a great job. And I would do it again. I don't know if I would do, Kevin Smith again, but they have other ones too. I know they have the Rock the Bells in November.
The Chris Jericho one?
The Chris Jericho one. So they have like a few of them that I would do. But overall, I thought it was good. These cruises are a lot different than an average cruise that you'd go on. They're usually on multiple cruise, the average cruise, they have lounge chairs all by the pool. The pools are open. They cut down a pool on this for to build a stage for Kevin Smith and everybody else that was there. So they cut down a lot of major parts of
Faith was disappointed with that, but I enjoyed all the film aspects of it. If you're a film fan, it was really cool. Got to see Mark Bernardin's short film Splinter on board. Then he did a Q&A with that, so that was pretty cool. I enjoyed all that film stuff, the podcast recording. So I had a good time, I still think a resort is a little bit better of a vacation. I think you get more bang for your buck.
This was the way it was because it was a, Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes cruise.
And it was also their first time. They're doing it again in 2026. And
they had a Mobies.
Oh, that was amazing.
They had Hater Tots, Onion Rings, Cow Tippers. So that was pretty cool. And then on the boat, on the elevators, they had pictures of them.
Yeah,
so it was really nice. And then we spent a day in Florida because our trip to Florida was awful. But that's a different story. But we spent the day in Florida after that. We had a nice dinner, lunch. We sat at the beach. We swam in the ocean.
Holy shit! Is that the ocean?
It was nice.
Yeah, it was a great time. Really, overall, a good trip. Glad to be back, though. Missed my dogs, missed the house, and, all that stuff. So, it was pretty cool. Let's dive into the Q&A. And this is from Mr. Smelly Potato. And he wrote, I always wanted a live-action Jetsons movie. What do you think about the cast, and how would you cast? Steve Carell as George Jetson, Danny DeVito as Mr. Spacey, Nicole Kidman as Jane, I could see that, Scarlett Johansson as Judy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Elroy, and Jane Lynch as Rosie.
I like that.
I think that's honestly, overall, that's a great choice. Honestly, the only one I would probably... I could see Steve Carell as George Jetson, but I could also see Will Ferrell.
I was going to say that.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's the only... I'm actually really surprised they never did a live-action Jetsons film at this point. We did get the live-action Flintstones movie. Do you remember it was either the late 90s or early 2000s, they did a crossover with the Jetsons and Flintstones on Cartoon Network?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I loved that episode.
I was so excited for that. The build-up to that, I loved.
It was good.
Crossovers were so much fun when you were a kid.
Yeah.
That was the big one. I really was excited for that. Who else? Would I swap anyone else out? I love that you picked Jane Lynch for Rosie. That's a great choice. Jane Lynch is very underrated. Scarlett Johansson or Judy, that's pretty much perfect. I can honestly also see, what's her name? Kristen Wiig in that role as well, because Kristen Wiig has a little bit more of the comedy, whereas Scarlett Johansson can do comedy as well, but I could definitely see them swapping out Kristen Wiig for that. But overall, I think you nailed this. Danny DeVito as Mr. Spacey is a great choice. Anytime.
Oh, yeah. He's bald, short. Yeah.
I know. I still think Danny DeVito would have been the perfect choice, even as much as I love Jim Carrey, over as, what's his name in the Sonic movies?
Oh, Mr.
Well, he was called Eggman, and then what's his name? Dr. Robotnik.
Dr. Robotnik. Yeah, not Mr.
Because he has the look, Danny DeVito, whereas Jim Carrey, though, man, he has the movement, the voice, everything else, so it still works.
Yeah, I think it takes more than just how you look.
The rubble is always a nice touch.
You know, obviously that's why I haven't gotten a movie role, because I am the best looking guy ever.
Which he told Kevin Smith.
I did. When I met Kevin Smith and Jay Muse, I said, oh yeah, it finally feels, because it was the last day we met him, I said, it finally feels good to meet the second and third best looking guys on the trip. You know, it's been hard for me out there. They both got a laugh out of that. So anyway, great question, Mr. Smelly Potato. Thank you so much, buddy. Moving on to the next question, and this is from Kevin Kruger. And he wrote, how would you rank the following family duos? Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal, Denzel Washington and John David Washington, Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez, the Baldwin brothers, Luke and Owen Wilson, Michael Douglas and Kurt Douglas, Kate and Rooney Mara, Casey and Ben Affleck, Donald Sutherland and Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, that's a tough one.
I think the best one, right off the top for me, would have to be... Wow, it's actually tough. I'm going to go with Michael Douglas and Kurt Douglas, because they both dominated like two different generations, and they were also, you know, great producers. Michael Douglas was actually, he won a Producers Academy Award for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest before he ever even won an Academy Award as an actor. He really wasn't an actor before that.
Yeah.
So that's where I would go at number one. Where would you go?
See, the problem with this is that there's certain people I would pick, but then there's the other person
Like
that
Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
Stop taking your medication.
You're such a fuck ass.
Yeah, Maggie Gyllenhaal was not one of my favorites.
Like, I love
either.
Denzel Washington, and I like John David Washington too, but he's no Denzel.
No, well, not many people are. Denzel's like one of the top 5 greatest actors ever. John David Washington literally has to fill those shoes. John David Washington,
He's good.
He's good, but you know what? He really proved it a little bit more to me with The Creator. I actually was like, okay, I can finally buy it. Because, like, you know, I liked him in Malcolm Marie, but I felt like he was very plain and generic and Tenet. Black Klansman he was actually really good in.
I think that just shows range.
Yeah, which I want to see more from him. But I think that, so they would probably actually be kind of like in the middle for me. I would have to honestly put Casey and Rooney Mara towards the bottom, just because they don't have the greatest of catalogs
I like
yet.
the Baldwin brothers. I think they have a good catalog.
I mean, you know, you got Alec Baldwin's obviously the leader of the bunch, and then you got Billy Baldwin, who also goes by William Baldwin. He's great in Backdraft. Stephen Baldwin has his moments, like in The Usual Suspects, but just like with John David Washington and Denzel Washington, I feel like there's one that's like holding him up, or Jake, same thing with that. That's why I think that it's definitely Michael Douglas, Kurt Douglas at 1 and as number 1.
And Casey and Ben, I like Ben Affleck.
But they both, Casey Affleck has an Academy Award winner. So, you know, you got to give him that. Ben Affleck, I still think, is the better. But yeah, I think I could put those at number 2, personally. And then...
I love Ben.
And then Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez. And if you want to even throw in Charlie Sheen, like the three of them, that would be a big-time acting group. I mean, Martin Sheen's still the best of them. Emilio Estevez, though, he had a pretty big run in the late 80s, early 90s. So that's a good one, too. So I think I'd put them at 3. Luke and Owen Wilson, they're both great. I just feel like, you know, they don't pop up as much as they did, like, in the 2000s.
Yeah.
You would see Luke and Owen Wilson in everything.
Sometimes people, which one is that?
Yeah, I know. You always know Owen because of the blonde hair. Like, they talk very similar. But, you know, Owen Wilson also has that great working relationship. I mean, I guess Luke Wilson, too, with Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
You know, they wrote, Bottle Rocket together. And Bottle Rocket's great. Luke and Owen Wilson are in that.
Don't give a $500 tip to the housekeeper. That's inappropriate. That's inexcusable.
So they'd be pretty high up too at number like 4. Donald Sutherland and Kiefer Sutherland. This is a great one too, because Donald Sutherland is one of the great 70s actors, and he still pops up every now and again. He's always good. But Kiefer Sutherland, for 80s people, how do you not love him in like The Lost Boys, Flatliners, and then he came around back again with 24. So I think if I was going to rank him, I would go Michael Douglas, Kurt Douglas at number 1, Donald Sutherland and Kiefer Sutherland at number 2, the Baldwin brothers at number 3.
I agree.
Luke and Owen Wilson at number 4, Casey and Ben Affleck at number 5.
I think it's pretty like high up there, but
Then a Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez at 6, the Baldwin brothers at 7, and I believe that just leaves the Rooney and Kate Mara at number 8. So, fair, right?
Okay, yeah.
That was a well thought out question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. We really appreciate that, man. A fun hypothetical question from 021OM6. And he wrote a fun hypothetical question for you both. If you had the power to make a movie, what genre would you pick? What 3 actors and actresses would you have starred it? And what director would you let directed? And what would you call it?
Okay, so I would do a thriller.
You would do a thriller. You do love thrillers.
Because even book-wise, I can probably make a nice thriller after reading all the books. I mean, you know, take a little bit from each author that I like. The actors, I love Denzel in thrillers, so I might cast him. Maybe Emma Stone. Maybe, I mean, after yesterday, I liked Timothy Chalamet. I thought he was good.
You finally got sold on him after Dune, right?
So, well, I know I've been sold on him, but just I could see his range a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who I would have directed because there's so many good directors, and I don't know thriller. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like, who would I trust to make this thriller?
Good thriller director, you know. I guess who would be a good thriller director? I mean, Jordan Peele makes essentially horror thrillers.
Yeah, but I don't know if I would do horror.
You wouldn't have any horror, straightforward.
I mean, no. I mean, there would be a little bit of aspect of horror in it, but it wouldn't be like a straight horror thriller.
Who's the guy who directed Jacob's Ladder? That's the director you want. So I'm thinking you need Adrian Lin to be your director. So that's my best guess. I was trying to remember the name, but, you know, he directs a lot of thrillers like Jacob's Ladder, Indecent Proposal, you know, Unfaithful, the remake of the remake of Lolita. Like, you know, this is what he does. This is what he does. So I think that's the director you need. And do you have a name for it?
I don't know. You come back to me. I'm going to think of something.
All right. Well, if I was going to make a film, I would definitely, if I had the option, I would always make a sci-fi film because I always think that world building is the best. I don't know if I'd be good at it. That's why you hire a great director. And if I'm creating a sci-fi film, I'm either going to hire Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve.
Sorry. It would be called like Locked Door or something like that. Or something like that.
That's good. Lock and Key, which I think is already a show.
Mm.
But, good thinking on that. Okay, all right. So I think I would go to Denis Villeneuve or Christopher Nolan to direct because I think they get the most with the amount of money that they're given, and I want my film to feel big and epic as well. You know, I want to combine like sci-fi and action. You know, throw a time machine in there. I'm always good for a time machine. I would love James Cameron to come back, but he's too busy to come and shoot my movie because he's making Avatar films. So we won't get him. And if I was picking 3 actors to be in it, my 2 leads would be male and female. They'd be Lakeith Stanfield and Emma Stone. I would have somebody else in there as well. And I think that actor, who do I love right now, who is a fantastic actor? I always want Benicio del Toro in something. I love it whenever he pops up. And he just always plays a great badass. I just rewatched Sicario, so kind of have him on the brain. So I think I'd want him in there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
What would I call this movie?
That's hard because you got to put a lot of time and like thought into that.
Yeah, what is the film about? Like, you
have to know what the film is going to be about.
Yeah, and I don't have like what would I call it? A cool like catchy name though, like something with time always stands out. Or like, you know, you could just call it like That One Time. Like it'd sound good in a trailer, or, you know, something like that, and then have it fade away into the dust. I don't know, like have like the sand blow it away.
Maybe time lapse or something like that.
Time lapse or time lost, like something like that. Yeah, no, okay. That was a great question, buddy. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Really got us thinking too. And to get Faith thinking, you know, you really pulled something out there. So that's a great question. And then the next Kevin Kruger question is, how would you rank the following TV shows? Family Matters, Home Improvement, Boy Meets World, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Saved by the Bell, and Step by Step.
This is my kind of question.
I see that.
All right. So for me, absolutely number 1 would be Boy Meets World.
Okay, number 1 for me would be The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
You're wrong.
Number 2 would be Boy Meets World, though.
Then I would probably say Saved by the Bell.
Wow. Okay, Saved by the Bell's number 2.
When I wake up in the morning and the alarm gets out of warning, I don't think I'll ever make it on time.
My number 3 this is Home Improvement.
Okay, so then I would say The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
That's your number 3?
Turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air.
All right, my number 4 is going to be Family Matters.
Yeah, same.
All right, so then my number 5 is Saved by the Bell.
Mine is Home Improvement.
Wow. And then
last is Step by Step. We had those same.
And last.
All right, Fist.
You definitely went a little too high, I feel like, on Saved by the Bell.
Nope. With Saved by the Bell, it's nostalgia for me. And it is just my childhood.
Like, I love cheese.
I think you are a little bit you're 5 years younger than me, so I think that really has an impact on you watching that show.
I've watched Saved by the Bell at least 4
I'm not
times.
saying that you didn't watch it. I'm saying to appreciate it. Like, you watched it way after it was off.
Yeah, but so I also watched most of these shows way after they were off. Well, except for Boy Meets World. I guess that was on when I was watching. Like, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was on, but it was over by 96. So,
Yeah.
like, you know.
But the
Saved by the Bell was like, what, over by 93?
Yeah, Saved by the Bell was in the 80s.
Yeah, most of these are actually on, like, ABC's lineup Friday night. What was that called? Friday night something?
Oh my God, it was called
Oh my God. They had
TGIF.
Yep, that's it. I knew it had something to do with Fridays. Something to do with Fridays. Good food there, by the way. So that was a great question as well, Kevin. And then the very last question is actually not for me. I already answered this last week, so I said that you would answer it next week because Carlos Chavez Ed. My question is for both of you. Top 5 80s kid family movies of all time, not including cartoons. His were The Goonies, Never-Ending Story, The Boy Who Could Fly, Indian in the Cupboard, and Flight of the Navigator.
Okay, so I liked, I'm going to say Star Wars, Return of the Jedi.
That is definitely the most family-friendly film, that's for sure.
Big.
Big was on my list.
I liked The Money Pit.
The Money Pit is great. Tom Hanks.
Ghostbusters.
You know, I was on the fence if I would call that a family movie or not. That's why I didn't have it on my list, even though it definitely is something you probably did watch with the family in the 1980s.
Twins.
Twins is 100% a family movie. Ivan Reitman again. Second Ivan Reitman movie.
And, I'll say like Bill and Ted or something like that.
I'm surprised you didn't pick like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
I wasn't a big Honey, I Shrunk the Kids person.
I
Not
love
gonna
that.
lie.
I love that one. I actually grew up with all three of them. I don't know if you even realized there was 3 of them. There's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Honey, I Blew Up the Baby, and Honey, I Shrunk Ourselves, which I saw in the movies. And that's actually, I believe, unless he came back for something else, but that was the last big Rick Moranis role before he unfortunately retired from acting. Because of, you know, his wife got cancer and he wanted to take care of him. And actually, Kevin, you asked a question that I'm going to actually answer later in this video, and I forgot about Rick Moranis. I would love for him to come back to act as well. That'll make sense in about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. But Rick Moranis would be great to come back to acting as well. Thank you, everybody who asked those questions. I'm going to kick it off to myself, and I'll be answering the rest of this week's questions. And if by chance you didn't see your question answered on this week's show, we'll make sure we answer that next week. So, all right, John, take it from here. And the first solo question for me this week is from Spider-Man 1408. And before anyone asks, I am not sure if this is the real Spider-Man or not.
Holy shit. Dennis is Spider-Man.
No one is Spider-Man.
But he wrote at Let's Talk Entertainment Media, does the Disney-Sony deal mean that we'll finally get 20th Century Fox titles on 4K Blu-ray? Yes, I was hoping for a little bit more of an update since we talked about this on last week's show. We still only have the information we had last week, which is that Sony is going to be distributing all of Disney's releases on 4K Blu-ray or any physical media release, whether it be on 4K Blu-ray or DVD or whatever it is. Sony is going to be the distributor. Now, we don't know who's going to be doing the mastering of all this. Is it going to be done by Disney? Is Disney going to pay Sony to do the mastering? Does Sony have access to all of Disney's library of films, which includes 20th Century Fox films? That I'm not entirely sure of. Do they have like their pick of the litter where they can walk in like a Criterion closet and go, ooh, look at that, Tron. I want to bring that to 4K Blu-ray for the fans. I don't know if that's how it's going to work. I think we're still in the early wait and see phase. We know that 20th Century Films, The First Omen, is going to be the first release that Sony actually does on physical media for Disney. And I expect we'll get some more announcements. We'll uncover a little bit more as time goes on. But really, we got our fingers crossed. A lot of us are hoping that we're going to get these 20th Century films on 4K Blu-ray. You know, films like The Rock, films like Fight Club, which we really need a 4K Blu-ray release of. And it's 25 years, and I was talking to somebody else, and they're actually seeing Fight Club in theaters for its 25th anniversary, which is always a good sign for a 4K Blu-ray release as well, you know, celebrating 25 years. If you could have something line up on an anniversary, a lot of times the studios like to get those out for 4K Blu-ray releases. So we can only hope, Spider-Man, that we actually do get these 20th Century Fox films on 4K Blu-ray or any kind of physical media release with a new upgrade to them this year. I hope so, but we'll just have to wait and see. Unfortunately, we still haven't gotten that much news on that yet. And the next question is from Uncle V. Uncle V is actually a friend of mine, so he picked me me up from the airport this week. He picked me and Matt, if you guys remember Matt, up from the airport, us and our wives, took us home. And when I got in the car, he's like, oh, I want you to talk about this. And he asked a question this week. He's like, how's Paprika? And like I said a couple weeks ago, I didn't know who Tinto Brass was. I think I might have heard the name, but I wasn't very familiar with his films. Now, Uncle V, very familiar with his films, and he actually let me borrow this Blu-ray, and he wants a review of it. So I don't know if I'll review it here on the channel. That's really going to come down to you guys. I'll give him a personal review the next time I see it, but he let me borrow the Blu-ray. Haven't checked it out yet, Uncle V. I will pretty soon, and we got to get together on March 23rd for WrestleMania 13. I'll definitely have my full thoughts on it when that comes out. When he told me about Paprika, I thought he was talking about a different Paprika. I didn't know he was talking about this one, and apparently Tinto Brass does have a lot of other good films. I'll have to check him out. He seems to make like these erotic comedies, something that I'm not too familiar with. That's not really a genre I dive into, is a lot of erotic films, but I know Uncle V is a big fan of those types of films, so I'm going to have to check them out in his honor. So Uncle V, I'll definitely have my thoughts for you the next time I see you, buddy. What movie deaths caught you off guard the most? And actually, number one is going to have to go to... So this is a spoiler alert for any of the films I'm about to talk about. So if you don't want to know about these deaths, maybe cover your ears or skip ahead a little bit. So we'll start off. I'll just give the movie title and I'll give the actor who dies. But for me, the first one that really shocked the hell out of me was in Martin Scorsese's The Departed.
I am killing you.
When the elevator doors open and you get Leonardo DiCaprio get his brains just blown out the back of his head and you don't know who the hell did it. Then right after that, Anthony Anderson gets killed and you're just like, what the hell is going on? Leonardo DiCaprio, he is the main character of this film. Yeah, we're cycling between a bunch of different characters, but Leo's really the moral compass of this movie. Matt Damon is phenomenal in The Departed. It actually might be his best role, mainly because you absolutely hate him. He is an absolute scumbag in The Departed. He plays that part perfectly. Leonardo DiCaprio, he means well. He has the best of intentions, and he's just really stuck. And then, of course, what ends up happening? The inevitable, and he ends up being killed. And I mean, The Departed is filled with a lot of shocking deaths. Martin Sheen's death as well. And then another one is Tommy and the Goodfellas, another Martin Scorsese film. So, Martin Scorsese likes to kill his characters just out of nowhere. Like, when you first watch Goodfellas, you think that Tommy's going to get put in. They don't really let you know that he's going to die. There's no hint of it. We kind of forgot about the Billy Bat situation. We thought that...
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
Motherfucking
We thought that had all been cleared up. We hadn't brought it up in about a half hour, 45 minutes in the film. And then when he gets his brains blown out, and then he's like, we did the best we could. And you just get that great scene of Robert De Niro crying, flipping the phone booth over. I mean, that is just great crying acting. Robert De Niro, I mean, that might actually be the best crying acting I've ever seen, is in that one scene in Goodfellas where Robert De Niro's crying, where, he can't control his emotion. He's, like, trying to hold it back because he doesn't want to cry in front of Henry Hill, Ray Liotta, but he can't, so he's, like, trying to hold it back. I mean, my God, that is just phenomenal acting, and that's why Robert De Niro's Robert De Niro, and he's one of the greatest actors ever. But those were the deaths that shocked me the most, and they both come from Martin Scorsese. I mean, I guess another one would be in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction when he shoots Marvin in the face.
Stop it! What the fuck's happening? Oh, man. Shit, man.
Oh man, I shot Marvin in the face.
It's like, I didn't expect that at all, especially since the movie's told non-linearly, and we come back to these guys. Marvin's not a big character or anything, but we don't expect him to die. But then when John Travolta shoots him in the face, and he just reacts like, I shot Marvin in the face, and Samuel Jackson, he's not even upset that he's dead, he's just upset that he made this huge mess. That's a great one as well. That's a fantastic question. Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate that one, buddy. What actors that don't act anymore would you like to see a comeback? So the actors I would absolutely love to see a comeback from the most would be like Gene Hackman or Jack Nicholson, but they're too old, they're retired, and I don't want them to come back. I mean, Gene Hackman's like 94 years old. He's still kicking around. Still looks pretty good, too, really. At 94 years old, I'll probably be 30 years dead, so I will not look like that. I'll just be bones at that point, but still, Gene Hackman's out there, still walking around. Jack Nicholson, same thing. He's an older man. Let's let him retire. That's why last year when people were taking pictures of him at his house, it's like, I mean, Jack Nicholson's in his late 80s. The guy put his body through hell. Let him enjoy the rest of his life. We don't need him to come back and act. We got the classic films already. We don't need to have him come back and, be kind of like a shell of himself. I get that. Leave your legacy behind. It's like Daniel Day-Lewis. That's the guy who I would love to see come back, mainly because I think that he could still act. I still think he's got it in him, but Daniel Day-Lewis really commits a lot to his roles. He's a method actor. He's very famous for it, so... you know, he's got to really fully commit, and I don't think that he wants to do that anymore. I think it's probably a mental thing where he doesn't want to fully commit to a role like he really is used to doing. He really has to put his all into it for the role to come out as he wants it to come out. And, you know, when movies like There Will Be Blood and Gangs of New York, can you blame the guy? He falls into these roles. You forget that's Daniel Day-Lewis when he makes these movies. You don't see Daniel Day-Lewis. You see the character that he's playing. That's why I say he's the greatest actor of all time. You know, he doesn't have the widest range, but he puts everything he has into these films. And that's why Daniel Day-Lewis is the one guy I would absolutely love to see come back and do another film. And I actually truly believe that he will come back one day for one more. I don't think he could stay away forever. You know, most actors do eventually come back unless they kind of age out because, you know, you don't want them to come back as a shell of their former selves. That was a great question as well, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. I really do appreciate that. And the next Kevin Kruger question is, what do you think of AI potentially in the future portraying actors that have passed away? Well, I am very anti-AI. I don't like what AI is doing right now in the whole world. Despite, even what it's doing in the movie business, that's one thing. But just the way that AI is being used in our entire planet right now, I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a mistake. I think it's going to replace a lot of people's jobs. And that really does bother me. You know, corporations really run this planet, and corporate greed runs everything, and they're just going to be looking at their bottom line. They don't care about the human beings, the real people who do the actual work, who have done work for them for this amount of time. That's just not how this works. If AI can do the work and they don't have to pay them, they're going to do it. But unfortunately, AI is extremely dangerous. You know, you hear all these stories, and of course, if you've seen any Terminator film, they warned you about it, but nobody wanted to believe those films. Cheesy 80s and 90s Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Nope. Those movies had a lot more to say than people gave them credit for. And you know what? That's why The Terminator is the greatest film of all time. But either way, how do I feel about AI possibly portraying dead actors? I do not like that at all. I don't want to see them do that. I really want AI as far away as from Hollywood as possibly can. AI can do some good, but you know what? I feel like the bad just outweighs the good way too much in any scenarios. Anything to do with artificial intelligence, I say just get it out of here because you're going to be taking jobs away from human beings. And you know, once an actor has passed away, you know, let them be gone. I get like wanting to bring them back to the movies. Like what happened with Carrie Fisher and The Rise of Skywalker, you know, that made a little bit more sense. And they kind of put her in Rogue One. And that's because, you know, we're trying to portray the Carrie Fisher from A New Hope. So that makes sense why they would do that. Same thing with Peter Cushing's in that movie. That makes a little bit more sense. But if we're going to be trying to cast actors who have already passed away into films that they haven't already been in, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea. Let a younger generation of actors do it. If you have to recast a role, that's fine. We've already done that numerous times. How many different James Bonds have we had? How many different Batmans have we had? Nobody's really complaining about that. You know, people pass away. It's a part of life, and I think that's something that should remain a part of life. I don't think we should be trying to keep people alive through the world of artificial intelligence. I feel like that's a really bad idea. I feel like AI in general is just a really bad idea that was inevitable, unfortunately, for humanity. But you know what? We don't like to learn lessons the easy way. We like to learn them the hard way. So unfortunately, this will be another lesson that we do have to learn the hard way. But I'm hoping that, you know, after last year's strikes, this isn't something that is really on the horizon. I'm hoping that Hollywood themselves are looking in the mirror and trying to figure out the best way to keep things going. Because if they continue on the path that they're going right now, I don't think it ends very happily. So I'm really hoping that they make some solid changes to really, you know, bring things back and just try and make great films again. And then, of course, since we're a physical media channel, bring those films to physical media for all the fans out there. That was another great question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. And that's going to do it here for another week of Let's Talk Physical Media. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on. If you have any questions for next week's show for Faith or I, leave those in the comment section below, or look out for the Wednesday post where we'll ask for your guys' questions there. And if you want to try and support this channel financially, we do have 3 tiers. You can check out all the perks for each membership in the description below. Just click that link. We have a Friends of the Channel tier. We have a Producers tier. That's where you're going to find John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Mr. Smelly Potato. We also have a Directors tier. That's where you're going to find Frank's Media and Reviews, who has a great YouTube channel as well. And we're also working on a collab here on the channel, so definitely keep your eyes out for that. But if you got no money to toss our way, guys, we don't mind at all. We just really appreciate you guys checking out this video, and we really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, why don't you get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.